So everybody loves the Iran Lego propaganda videos. Even Americans love the Iran propaganda videos. So this is going to be I also know that there's been a lot of copycats and not necessarily coming from Iran, like potentially people in the West as well that are just like copying the style and like putting out videos. So there's essentially like a network now of people making this stuff, and not all of it's from Iran anymore. I kind of like the OG ones back when I knew they were all coming from Iran. I don't watch them as much anymore now that I know that there's like copycats out there. But anyway, so this is a video that's going to go into, I guess, some of the people, like interviews with some of the creators of these Iranian Lego style AI videos. So let's go ahead and watch this real quick.
If you're on the internet, you've likely seen these highly popular Iranian Lego-style videos.
Run back to your crib, you ain't safe on these blocks, get lost, Goldilocks!
Published almost daily, these detailed videos with American and Western cultural references have taken the world by storm. The group that makes these publishes across social media platforms, but recently had their YouTube account shut down for showing violent content.
I talked about that the other day. Yeah, they YouTube censored them. I can't remember for what reason, but YouTube censorship, like, I don't know. The YouTube censorship rules are a little bit over the top, in my opinion.
But who is behind these videos? Is it Iranian government propaganda? Are they in Iran or are they outside Iran? I spoke to the creators behind the viral Iranian Lego-style videos. I reached out to the team on X, introduced myself, and requested an interview. They promptly responded back and asked where I was from. As an Iranian journalist, I did expect this, and from there, the conversation switched to Persian. Before agreeing to interview with me, they asked if I was in support of the US and Israel's war with Iran. This was my response. As a professional and impartial journalist, my duty is to report events as objectively as possible, without the interference of my personal opinions. As an Iranian, I would never welcome the destruction of my country.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. Because I think that a lot of journalists hide behind objective, like the vague concept of objectivity, to avoid ever having to make a moral decision, right? And I think that like their version of objectivity usually involves a lot of heavy framing and Western bias. Generally, in my opinion, like I don't think anybody can be purely objective on anything. I think that journalists like use the cover of objectivity to essentially push like Western narratives generally. So but this is a pretty good answer to that question.
As an Iranian, I would never welcome the destruction of my country. After another round of questions, these in English, we agreed to the group's first interview with an Iranian journalist and agreed to do the interview in Persian. Turns out, explosive media...
Sorry, let me go back and read some of these. To assess the possibility, so they're asking some questions to determine whether they want to do it or not. To assess the possibility of conducting an interview, please answer the following questions. Do you condemn the United States' aggressive war against Iran? Do you condemn the Israeli government and military for their military aggression against Iran? Do you condemn the Israeli government and military for the killings of numerous women, children, and innocent civilians? And do you believe they should be held, I assume, accountable? So those are the questions that they were asking. I would answer yes, yes, and yes.
and journalist, and agreed to do the interview in Persian. Turns out, Explosive Media is a small team of Gen Z creators. 18 to 25 years old, they say they all reside in Iran, and most have never left the country. Their spokesperson, who requested anonymity, said the initial goal of these videos was to show the outside world what Iranians are like: educated, culturally relevant, and funny.
We know
that the West has a bad perception of us. They don't know us at all. We wanted to break down this wall of censorship. We wanted to say that we're funny, funnier than you even. We understand culture and the arts, and we are incredibly educated.
Well, they did a great job on that, really, sincerely. They understand the West better than a lot of Westerners even understand the West. Like honestly, a lot of the propaganda brain people in America don't even understand half of the stuff that they're pointing out about America. Um, and so they are doing an incredible job at that. And I always like to compare it to like these are just a bunch of like Gen Z like post grad like college like just out of college kids making these incredibly culturally relevant and effective AI propaganda. And then if you look at the AI slop that our like top government officials put out, it's like fucking uh deportations Ghibli style or something, or like Trump dumping a bunch of shit on like the No Kings protesters, like it's so less like it's so much like less creativity and like not like but also like so much less effective in terms of propaganda than like this like these people. And I'm just uh Iran or America needs to, if they're going to be doing like propaganda for their war efforts and stuff, they should be hiring these people. I'm sure that it sounds like they're pretty very much opposed to America's war of choice against Iran, so they probably would say no. But still, like these people are way more talented than even our like top government officials in terms of creating effective propaganda. It's kind of wild, to be honest. I thought that was the one thing that we were supposed to be really good at, was creating propaganda, and apparently these people are doing it way better than us.
We know and understand your American culture well. You don't unfortunately know as much about our culture. We hope that you learn more about ours.
While the explosive media team is clear that they support the government, they told me that their videos reflect their own independent political views.
We are committed to the Islamic Republic. That's our belief, our point of view. No one has to tell us that. Before the war, we made critical videos of the government just like other media companies that criticize their governments. But once there is a war, internal fights no longer matter.
There has been some question as to whether they work for the Iranian government or have them as a client.
We did not say we work with the IRGC. We're like any other media company in the world. When they create something, the rights for distribution can be bought. The rights for distribution of some of our videos in Iran have sometimes been bought by state media.
Since the very first Lego-style videos came out, there's been a lot of discussion as to whether these...
See, that was something that I was confused about too. I wasn't sure if this was directly being funded and paid for by Iran, like to create these as propaganda, or if this... It seems like it's more that these guys were creating this stuff and potentially selling it to Iran, like the Iranian or the IRGC or whoever, to disseminate as propaganda after the fact. So it doesn't sound like it was directly funded by the government, but potentially the government does end up buying some of it as well. That's taking their word for it as well too.
Videos constitute as disinformation or propaganda. Mark Owen Jones, an expert in social media and disinformation, says the answer is a bit more complicated.
If I was to simplify it, I would see this as political satire, creative political satire, and a form of creative resistance against US imperialism. The fact that it's leveraged by the Iranian regime, of course, that's just what they're going to do if it's effective and successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess if it's not being funded and paid for directly by the Iranian state, it wouldn't necessarily be considered propaganda, but I still consider it just to be a form of propaganda. But yeah, it is also satire. I agree with that. It is like a creative like project. Like I would almost equate it to like artwork or something that comes out of like a resistance, like a resistance movement or something, or like times of suffering. Like maybe like the artwork that came out of Vietnam or something, like something along those lines. It is artistic and creative, but it can also be used as propaganda. Like as, for instance, I'm talking about like anti-war propaganda during that time period,
And I think to try and frame it as either pro or anti-government or government propaganda is a bit complicated.
Whether satire or propaganda, these videos speak to a moment in social media and geopolitics, one that the Iranian government has adapted to.
And I think the regime have become very savvy about the importance of social media, certainly domestically. I think internationally they've been savvy about that.
And it's not just so.
This is also something that's I think they kind of learned from Hamas, to be honest. Like so there's a decently long history of like militants and like resistance organizations using propaganda, like, or using social media as a tool for propaganda and counter programming against the West. I would say it started in its most like you know, primitive form with like the ISIS videos and stuff, where ISIS was doing like recruiting and stuff through propaganda videos and all that sort of stuff. I think it then evolved though into like, for instance, like Hamas using like equate or like putting out videos and you know, posts and stuff on social media correlating with the Black Lives Matter movement in America. Like they would see the Black Lives Matter movement happening in America, and then they would recognize the similarities between, you know, the oppressive boot of the police on like black people in America, and then compare that to the oppressive boot of the Israeli occupation forces in the West Bank or in Gaza, right? And they very effectively communicated their struggle in that, like, in that manner to Americans, which then I think also led to a lot of what we're seeing now. It's what like broke me out of my propaganda, like my pro-Israel propaganda, like goggles or whatever, or like the general groupthink in America, was seeing those sorts of correlations and then starting to think about it more and be like, you're right, it is very similar. So like then there was that, and then this is like kind of, I feel like the most so far, the most this Iranian Lego version is like the most effective like widespread sort of version of this since it's really become a thing for you know, for Islamic resistance movements to use it. I'm curious to see where it goes from here, because this is, like, to me, I feel like the pinnacle of it, but maybe it'll keep getting even better after this. Who knows?
Social media trends that have led pro-government Iranians to making these videos. The 2.5-year Gaza war has fundamentally changed the landscape in media and people's perceptions of the US and Israel.
But I really do think that the Gaza war has unleashed or has created a level of criticism of Israel in US politics and European politics that we have not seen before. And I think the creators of these videos and the Iranian regime in general know that, and they are using that to kind of emphasize that this war is not in the interest of Americans, but the interest of Israel. I think these are themes that resonate very profoundly amongst not just the left, but also the right, or certain aspects of the right.
The rise of explosive media and Iran's new social media strategy has coincided with an internet and communications blackout in Iran. A blackout that has left millions of Iranians cut off from the rest of the world. So how do these videos manage to make it out? Iran has set up an internal internet system for local companies and banks. And for people who can afford it, they buy VPNs and even Starlink. But explosive media doesn't use any of those. The group applied for an internet license as a news media company. The license allows news outlets to connect to the global internet. The process is long and the criteria unclear. As we wait for a possible deal to end this war, explosive media says they too hope for peace. And in the meantime, they say they'll keep making these videos.
Our fellow creator Layla there has done so much incredible reporting on this war. And I think the thing that stood out to me most from that was the guy who runs that page telling her, you know, as Iranians, they understand, you know, the US and the West, but they don't understand them. And I think in years gone by, Western media, I think, has done a really good job of kind of painting a certain narrative of other parts of the world, in this case, Iran. And I find it fascinating that this generation is kind of using social media to take back control of that narrative and kind of say, look, hey, we're not that different to you. We also, you know, we follow the same trends and, you know, even down to having the same sense of humour too.
Yeah, I think a similar thing stood out for me watching that. It's the fact that they said they're not necessarily pro-IRGC, but since the war, they are pro-Iran and they're pro their country. Now, obviously, there are reasons why they would say that, because as Layla mentioned, there's an internet license and there's a lot of surveillance. But a recent Gaman poll, which is, again, has its limitations with speaking to people in Iran, but that found that 20% of Iranians support the regime. So I think it's quite interesting that they would say, you know, we don't necessarily support the regime, but we don't support the destruction of our country either, and that's why they're doing this propaganda.
Yeah, and to both your points, it's really interesting to see. I think for so many years, Iran's propaganda has always been kind of focused on rallying people inside the country. Look at our strength. We're winning this war. Look at our fight. Here's a missile parade, or what, you know, here's the supreme leader speaking. And now it feels like you said, they're trying to project an image of themselves to the outside world and gain that control. And you know, we are.
It's a form of soft power as well. I think getting good at social media and creating a I think what Iran needs to do in the future, like to keep building momentum on this, is to start putting their cultural creative stuff, like the things that they want to be identified with culturally, out into the rest of the world, and start building that up. Particularly, they should build narratives that like show how they're different to like, I think like the Gulf states and stuff, which I think have built up a reputation of being, you know, tax havens for pedo billionaires. Like, I think that instead they should try to show the world, like in the future, what their country is, what it can produce, like what cultural touchstones do you want to be associated with Iran in the future, so that people, you know, to continue building momentum off of this, so that people, you know, especially in America, can stop can find ways to like get out of their programming. Like, they have been taught we in America have been taught from a very young age, like to orientalize a lot of the global South, including Iran, where a lot of Americans just think like it's a bunch of like desert huts in Iran or something, you know, like they haven't even seen a picture of Tehran or anything. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So like, I think that like this is probably the first, like these Lego propaganda videos are probably some of the first like cultural things that anyone in America has ever received or like watched from Iran. So I think you should just keep building on top of that if you want, because I think that fundamentally we want a safer world for everybody, right? And a safer world comes from people understanding each other as like as not being monoliths, and like as like cultures that like have things to offer to each other in various ways and stuff. And to do that, we have to first break out of our America propaganda, which we have like one of the most propagandized civilizations that has ever existed, potentially the most propagandized civilization that has ever existed. So this sort of stuff is starting to break down that propaganda, but then we need more, I think, to start humanizing all of these peoples at a much higher level. So that would be my recommendation to Iran. Like, keep building on top of that with more cultural things that you want to be associated with on like the world stage, as you continue to grow as a middle and regional hegemon, or whatever, middle power and regional hegemon.
Seeing kind of a divide in America and the conversation happening of was Iran an existential threat? Is this war America's war? What happened to America first? And so it is kind of achieving that propaganda that they want to at least drive the conversation of, this is how at least it's being viewed in Iran. So it's really interesting to see them and especially using AI as a tool to kind of enact this change.
They know all eyes are on them, and they knew they were going to get an outside audience looking at their videos. And I think Layla did another video the other week where she interviewed an expert who said you can tell that this new wave of propaganda from this war has been created by a younger sort of generation. to your point, that propaganda, internal propaganda, was created by a more traditional, older generation. It was more religious. It was sort of like iconography, etc. And this is very, very kind of aware of the world,
aware of social trends,
using rap music, etc. And you can tell there's been this huge shift. So
yeah, I don't know. I think that, I think they have done a good job of breaking through with their propaganda. I think, like I said, the next steps are to continue humanizing your population. I think that will be the best for everybody.